Mardell presents The Notorious Guide to Britain, written by Paul Donnelley, and read by Nick Bearden. The moral right of the author has been asserted. This performance is owned by Mardell. Introduction. This book is intended to be a fun and informative trip around the highways, not forgetting the lowways, and byways of Great Britain. Within its pages, you will find love and romance, murder and mayhem, royalty, aristocrats and commoners, politics and politicians, sex and scandal, sporting triumphs and disasters, millionaires and paupers, boffins and eccentrics, film stars and reality TV personalities, and much more besides. A note at first about what this book is not. It is not, mostly, a guide to where famous or notorious people were born, or where they lived. Several excellent guides on these subjects have already been published. An exception to this is if something happened in that home. For example, Enid Blyton's home, Green Hedges, is included because she became the world's most successful children's author there. It is a guide to, where possible, the exact locations where events actually happened and when they occurred. This is often more difficult than it sounds. All the locations in the book are in mainland Great Britain, apart from two, because I wanted to be able to drive, or get a train, or cycle, or walk to them all. This has turned out to be one of the most enjoyable books I have ever written, and I hope that it shows. If it causes you to discover something about the area in which you live or grew up, or persuades you to go sightseeing, then I feel my work will have been worthwhile. The book contains thousands of facts, and I have done my best to ensure its accuracy. If you come across a hopefully rare error, please contact the author via the publisher or via email paul@pauldonnelley.com, and it will be corrected in subsequent editions. Chapter 1. Great Britain, Weird and Wonderful. Asda, Wilson Street, Castleford, West Yorkshire, WF10. The story of Asda began in the 1920s, when the Asquith family ran a butcher's shop in Nottingham, West Yorkshire, which expanded to 7 stores. A group of dairy farmers, meanwhile, formed J.W. Hindle Dairy Farmers Limited, becoming Associated Dairies and Farm Stores Limited in 1949, with Arthur Stockdale as the managing director. In 1963, Peter and Fred Asquith took over Queen's, an old cinema building in Castleford, and turned it into a supermarket. 2 years later, on Monday the 3rd of May 1965, the Asquiths asked Associated Dairies to run the butchers in-store. A merger resulted in a new company, Asda, Asquith and Dairies. The Asquith brothers sold their stake in 1969. The ending of the retail price maintenance allowed Asda to offer customers products at prices it decided on, rather than the government. It bought 3 GEM, or Government Exchange Mart, shops in Preston, Lancashire, Crossgates, Leeds, and West Bridgford, Nottingham, and changed the shop's name to Asda in September 1965. The company began opening shops in the south in the 1970s, and in 1978 bought Allied Carpets. Asda Price first appeared in TV advertising in 1977, introducing the pocket tap, now the official sign language designation for the supermarket. The 100th Asda opened in 1981. The following year, the first shop in London saw the light of day. In May 1985, Asda merged with MFI, Mullard Furniture Industries, and the company became Asda MFI Group plc. In 1986, Asda began selling its own branded products, and in 1987 sold off MFI. In 1989, designer George Davies was hired to launch his George at Asda fashion line. On Monday, the 26th of July, 1999, American corporate giant Walmart's £6.7 billion takeover made Asda a subsidiary of the US firm. The following year, the company launched Smart Price, its no-frills brand, including cheese, fresh pies, frozen food, ready meals, and detergents. In April 2018, a merger was proposed between Asda and Sainsbury's, but the deal was blocked on Thursday, the 25th of April 2019, by the Competition and Markets Authority. On Friday, the 2nd of October 2020, Asda was bought by brothers Zubair and Mohsin Issa for £6.8 billion. Boots the Chemist. 6 Goosegate, Hockley, Nottingham, NG1 1FF. The first store, the British and American Botanic Establishment, was opened by the devoutly religious John Boot in 1849. Formerly an agricultural worker, Boot moved to Nottingham to start a new business selling herbal remedies. Very quickly became popular with the working classes, who could not afford to pay for a doctor. The system, the Thomsonian, allowed the poor in society to help themselves when it came to their healthcare. Boot died in 1860, aged 45, and his widow, Mary, and son, Jesse, took over the shop. In 1871, the business was renamed M&J Boot. In 1877, Jesse Boot, who was born at Nottingham Sunday the 2nd of June 1850 and died at Valais, Jersey, the Channel Islands, Saturday the 13th of June 1931, took over the business and began a publicity blitz using the legend "Health for a Shilling," which allowed the company to offer traditional medicines at much reduced prices. In 1883, the firm became Boots & Company Limited. The next year, Jesse opened the first Boots pharmacy in Nottingham, appointing his first qualified pharmacist, Edwin Waring. In 1885, he opened manufacturing facilities in Island Street. In 1888, the firm was renamed once more, becoming Boots Pure Drug Company Limited. The first flagship store opened in Pelham Street in 1892, selling a variety of goods, not necessarily linked to medicine. In 1898, the company started the Boots Book Lovers Library, which allowed customers to borrow books at a reasonable price. In just a few years, almost half of Boots shops had libraries, and by 1938, 35 million books a year were being borrowed. In July 1920, the company was sold to the United Drug Company of America. In 1924, Boots began offering a service fitting trusses for gentlemen. The following year, Boots opened a 24-hour pharmacy at its Piccadilly Circus branch. By 1933, 2 years after Jesse died, Boots had 1,000 shops in the UK. The 1,000th was in Galashiels. In 1934, the company launched its No. 7 brand of cosmetics. In 1951, Boots opened its first self-service shop at Burnt Oak, Edgware, North London. In August 1968, the firm bought the 614-shop chain Timothy White's and Taylors Limited. Timothy White's vanished from the high street in 1985. In 2006, Boots Healthcare International was sold to Reckitt Benckiser, and the Boots Group merged with Alliance Unichem to form Alliance Boots. Did you know? The first pharmaceutical patent registered by Boots was in 1921 for a drug called stabilizin, which was used to treat syphilis. Bieber, 87 Abingdon Road, Kensington, London, W8 6AW. After running a successful mail-order business, Stephen Fitzsimon and his wife, fashion illustrator Barbara Hulanicki, opened their iconic store at this location, a former chemist, at 10 a.m. on Saturday the 5th of September 1964. Bieber was the nickname of Hulanicki's younger sister, Biruta. Hulanicki, who was born at Warsaw, 8th of December 1936, had copied fashions from Paris to make ready-to-wear clothes available to the under-30s. Her first day was a great success, as she remembered. The shop was packed with girls trying on the same brown pinstripe dress in concentrated silence. Not one asked if there were any other styles or sizes. The louder the music played, the faster the girls moved, and more people appeared in the shop. I had sold every dress by 11. A second Biber opened in February 1966 on Queen's Road, Brighton, BN1, but closed before the end of the year. In March of the same year, the shop moved to 19 to 21 Kensington Church Street, London W8 4LF, and then, on Monday the 15th of September 1969, to a former carpet shop at 120 Kensington High Street, London W8 7RL, where the premises were 9 times bigger than Abingdon Road, more than 80,000 square feet. The move was a qualified success. In the first year, they made a profit of £400,000, but the finances were too much for Hulanicki and her husband, and they sold 75% of Biber to Dorothy Perkins and Dennis Day in December 1969. Nearly 4 years later, in August 1973, Dorothy Perkins was bought out by property group British Land. On Monday the 10th of September 1973, the company, now Big Biber, moved into the 7-story former Derry and Tom's department store at 99 to 117 Kensington High Street, London W8 5SA, and further expanded with more stores, children's clothes, a food hall, and a private members club, the Rainbow Room, in the roof gardens. It was said that 1 million people visited every week. David Bowie and Mark Bolan were regulars. Fashions changed, but Biber did not, or could not, keep up with the times, and British Land closed the store in September 1975. In 2009, House of Fraser successfully relaunched the Biber brand, but Barbara Hulanicki denounced the line as too expensive and for failing to reflect the original Biber style. On Saturday the 31st of December 2011, she was awarded the OBE for services to the fashion industry. In 2014, she agreed to serve as a consultant for Biber, her first involvement with the brand since 1975. Borley Rectory, Hall Road, Borley, Essex, CO10 7AE. The most haunted house in England was built in 1863, on the site of an old Benedictine monastery, built in 1362, near the River Stour, on the instructions of the Reverend Henry Dawson Ellis Bull, who was born at Essex, Friday the 23rd of November, 1832, and died at Blueroom, Borley Rectory, Monday the 2nd of May, 1892, who had been appointed pastor of the area the previous year. Borley Rectory was eventually 3 stories high, and had 20 rooms. The Reverend Mr. Bull and his family of 14 children lived there for many years until his death in 1892. It was in 1885 that P. Shaw Jeffrey, who lived from 1862 to 1952, a university friend of Harry Foister Bull, first claimed sightings of a ghostly nun in the rectory grounds. According to local law, the apparition was the spirit of a 14th-century nun from Bures Convent, 7 miles southeast of Borley, who had fallen in love with a monk from the monastery. Apparently, they fled in a coach and horses, but were captured. The coachman was beheaded, the monk hanged, and the nun walled up inside the convent. Unfortunately for the legend, there never was a convent at Bures, nor a monastery at Borley. In 1886, a nurse staying at the rectory left because she said she heard phantom footsteps. Harry Bull inherited the house and the pastorship. On Tuesday the 12th of September 1911, Bull married and moved to Borley Place, leaving his sisters at the rectory. 9 years later, he returned to live at Borley Rectory and stayed there until his own death on Thursday the 9th of June, 1927. Coincidentally, he also died in the Blue Room, which quickly gained a reputation for being haunted. On Saturday the 28th of July, 1900, 3 of Harry Bull's sisters saw what they claimed was a ghostly nun in the garden. The area became known as the Nun's Walk. After the rectory had been empty for a year, the Reverend Guy Eric Smith and his wife Mabel moved in on Tuesday the 2nd of October, 1928. During their tenure, they complained of mysterious footsteps, doorbells ringing of their own accord, and phantom stone throwing. The Smiths rang the Daily Mirror in June 1929, and on Wednesday the 12th of June, the ghost hunter Harry Price of the Society for Psychical Research arrived at the house with his secretary and stayed for 3 days. Price returned for a second visit on Thursday the 27th of June 1929. On Sunday the 14th of July 1929, the Smiths moved out to Long Melford, where they stayed for a few months. On Thursday the 16th of October 1930, the Reverend Lionel Algernon Foyster, his wife Marianne, and their adopted daughter Adelaide moved in and stayed for 5 years. They moved out in October 1935 due to Foyster's ill health, not because of the apparent ghostly goings-on. The Foysters claim to have witnessed more than 2,000 poltergeist phenomena, ranging from smashed glasses and stone throwing to mysterious writing on the walls. A strange force even apparently threw Marianne Foyster out of bed one night. Price called that period the most extraordinary and best documented case of haunting in the annals of psychical research. Price leased Borley Rectory from June 1937 until 1938, and hired 48 assistants to assist with his investigation, the results of which were printed in his book The Most Haunted House in England, published on Saturday the 3rd of August 1940, incidentally the same day that Reverend Guy Eric Smith died. Captain William Hart Gregson bought the property in December 1938. It was gutted by fire on Monday the 27th of February 1939 after he accidentally knocked over an oil lamp. The fire caught hold quickly, and the rectory was destroyed beyond repair, being finally demolished in 1944. Harry Price died at Pulborough, Sussex, on Monday the 29th of March 1948, and subsequently, authors have claimed that all the happenings at Borley Rectory were the result of misinterpreted natural occurrences, hoaxing, hearsay, and damp and shoddy workmanship when the house was originally built, not ghosts. Boy Scouts. Brownsea Island, Poole Harbour, Dorset, BH13 7EE. Robert Baden-Powell held the first Boy Scout camp on Thursday the 1st of August 1907 here, 560 acres of woodland and open areas with 2 lakes. Baden-Powell, the hero of the siege of Mafeking, was concerned about the moral rectitude and health of Britain's boys. He worried they were, quote, drifting into hooliganism for want of guiding hands to set them on the right road. Therefore, he set up what he called a scheme, and 22 boys from different backgrounds, ranging in age from 9 to 17, attended. The inaugural camp lasted until Thursday the 8th of August. Baden-Powell had visited Brownsea Island as a boy with his brothers. Of the 22 original scouts, the public school boys, or their parents, paid £1, while the working-class boys were all charged 3 shillings 6pence each. They were arranged into 4 patrols, and each had a different colour to identify them. Wolves, blue; ravens, red; bulls, green; and curlews, yellow. They were kept busy from 6 a.m. until 9 p.m., learning about wildlife, tracking, personal responsibility, how to tie knots, first aid, history, and the British Empire. The camp cost £55, 2 shillings and 8 pence, or £6,870 at 2022 values, making a loss of just over £24, or £2,900 in 2022. But nonetheless, Baden-Powell considered it a success. 6 of the Brownsea boys later died on the Western Front. A reunion of the survivors from the first camp was held in 1928 at Baden-Powell's home, Pax Hill, Bentley, Farnham, Hampshire, GU10 5NG. British Home Stores. 452 to 456 Brixton Road, Brixton, London, SW9 8EA. It was here, in April 1928, that British Home Stores, a private company, opened its doors for the first time. The American owners wanted to compete with Woolworths, so the most expensive item was on sale for 1 shilling, increased to 5 shillings the following year. After Brixton, the company opened branches in Church Street, Croydon, Harlesden, London, and Ilford, Essex, boasting that 96% of its merchandise was made in Britain. From the start, the shop sold lighting and had self-service cafes and food departments. British Home Stores had 7 branches by 1929 and became a public company on Thursday the 15th of December 1932, with £400,000, or £27,850,000 at 2022 values, issued capital. In 1960, despite its name, British Home Stores began to import stock. A columnist on The Times commented that British Home Stores has done more for the garment trade in Hong Kong than any other single buyer. All stores had shut by Sunday the 28th of August 2016, bringing a close to trading after 88 years. On Thursday the 29th of September 2016, BHS rebranded online as the British Home Store and opened a website. They now trade online only. Butlins Holiday Camp. Ingold Mills, near Skegness, Lincolnshire, PE25 1NJ. Sir Billy Butlin opened his first holiday camp here on Easter Saturday, the 11th of April 1936. Butlin himself had designed the camp and proclaimed, "My plans were for 1,000 people in 600 chalets with electricity, running water, 250 bathrooms, dining and recreational halls, a theatre, a gymnasium, a rhododendron-bordered swimming pool with cascades at both ends, and a boating lake." Work had begun on Wednesday the 4th of September 1935, cost £100,000, or £7,600,000 at 2022 values, to complete, and was officially opened by aviatrix Amy Johnson. Butlin placed an advert in the Daily Express announcing the opening, inviting the public to book for a week's holiday. Butlin offered weekly holidays with full board and free entertainment, costing between 35 shillings, or £113 in 2022, and £3, or £227 in 2022, according to the time of year. When the first guests failed to mingle, Butlin asked Norman Bradford, a camp engineer, to entertain them with jokes and merry quips. Thus began the Butlins' Redcoat. In 1937, the number of beds was doubled, and wireless and music hall stars began entertaining the campers on Sunday nights. A beauty contest was introduced in 1938, with the final at the Skegness Carnival. The same year, a second camp opened at Clacton-on-Sea in Essex, but plans to open a third, at Filey, were curtailed by the start of the Second World War when the Royal Navy took over Skegness and renamed the camp HMS Royal Arthur. Lord Haw Haw later claimed it had been sunk with all hands. The wily Butlin offered to complete the camp at Filey for the RAF and build 2 more at Ayr and Pwllheli, HMS Glendower, for the Navy, with a deal to buy them back when the war ended at 3/5 of their construction costs. He reopened Skegness on Saturday the 11th of May 1946. By 1947, Butlin was a millionaire. He bought hotels in Blackpool, Saltdean and Cliftonville, and opened 3 more camps, at Bognor Regis on Saturday the 2nd of July 1960, costing £2.5 million, or £59.5 million in 2022, Minehead on Saturday the 26th of May 1962 at a cost of £2 million, or £47.5 million in 2022, and Barry Island on Saturday the 18th of June 1966. It closed on Wednesday the 31st of December 1986. On Friday the 9th of August 1963, the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh visited Pwllheli. Butlin was knighted the following year. A cash flow crisis in 1968 forced him to hand over control to his adopted son, Bobby. In 1972, the company was sold to the Rank organisation for £43 million, or $623 million in 2022. Sir Billy Butlin died of stomach cancer at his home on Jersey. He was 80. Camillagate tape. Charles in Eaton Hall, Eaton Park, Eaton, Chester, CH4 9ET. Camilla in Bolhide Manor, Allington, Chippenham, Wiltshire, SN14 6LW. On Sunday the 17th of December 1989, the Prince of Wales was staying at the Cheshire home of Anne, Dowager Duchess of Westminster, when he rang his long-term mistress, Camilla Parker Bowles, at her home, Bolhide Manor, in Wiltshire. Unbeknown to either of them, their very private 8-minute conversation was being recorded. In it, Charles said, "Oh, God, I'll just live inside your trousers or something. It'd be much easier." To which his lover replied, "What are you going to turn into? A pair of knickers? Oh, you're going to come back as a pair of knickers." The heir to the throne then remarked, "Oh, God forbid. A Tampax, just my luck. My luck to be chucked down the lavatory and to go on forever, swirling around on the top, never going down." The radio ham who recorded the Camillagate tape has never been publicly identified. The Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament. Falcon Fields, Aldermaston, Tadley, Berkshire, RG7 4PR. The Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament held its first meeting on Monday the 17th of February 1958 at Westminster Central Hall, Storey's Gate, London, SW1H 9NH. It was attended by more than 5,000 people. It received support from intellectual left-wingers, including the philosopher Bertrand Russell, who lived 1872 to 1970, playwright J.B. Priestley, who lived 1894 to 1984, historian A.J.P. Taylor, living 1906 to 1990, and Canon John Collins, who lived 1905 to 1982. It demanded that Britain give up its nuclear weapons. After the meeting, around 1,000 people marched on Downing Street and stood outside shouting "Ban the bomb" and "Murderer" at Prime Minister Harold Macmillan, until police with dogs moved them away. By 1959, it had 270 branches throughout Britain. On the 4th of April 1958, the coldest Good Friday in 41 years, to the Atomic Weapons Research Establishment at Aldermaston, 50 miles away, arriving on Monday the 7th of April. The people on the march were mainly Labour supporters, middle class and well-educated. 2/3 were men, and a half were Christians. Cash point. 20 The Town, Enfield Town, Enfield, Middlesex, EN2 6LS. The first cash point, or ATM, opened at Barclays Bank in Enfield on Tuesday the 27th of June 1967. The first person in Britain to use the machine was the actor Reg Varney. The cash point was not like those we use today. The customers had to buy a punched card in advance for £10, which was then inserted into the machine. John Shepherd Barron, who lived 1925 to 2010, invented the cash point, the idea coming to him while he was in the bath. The Enfield machine was the first of 6 pilot machines, the others being in Hove, Ipswich, Luton, Peterborough, and Southend-on-Sea. Chung Ling Soo. Wood Green Empire, Theatre of Varieties, 14 High Road, Wood Green, London, N22 6HH. Chung Ling Soo was a great Oriental magician whose most celebrated trick was to catch 2 bullets fired at him from separate guns by assistants dressed as boxers. Like Ray Teller of the American magic act Penn and Teller, Chung never spoke in public and used an interpreter when he spoke to journalists off stage. It was all an illusion. Chung Ling Soo was no more Oriental than Paul Daniel or David Copperfield. His real name was William Ellsworth Robinson, and he was born in Westchester County, New York, on Tuesday the 2nd of April, 1861. He travelled worldwide, amazing people with his incredible trickery. His assistants would ask members of the audience to come on stage and mark the bullets to be fired at him. He would discreetly palm the bullets, and the guns would be fitted with substitute bullets that made a lot of noise and smoke but stayed safely in the barrel. On Saturday the 23rd of March 1918, at the Wood Green Empire in London, one of the guns suffered a mechanical failure and the bullet was really fired, hitting Chung in the chest. He collapsed to the floor, managing to utter the words, "Oh my God, something's happened. Lower the curtain." It was the only time that he spoke English in public. Taken to Passmore Edwards Cottage Hospital, 48 Gunnersbury Lane, London, W3 8EF, he died the following morning, aged 56. He is buried in East Sheen Cemetery, Kingsride Gate, East Sheen, TW10 5BJ. The Colony Room Club. 41A Dean Street, London, W1D 4PY. The Colony Room was a Soho drinking club that became notorious. It was opened by a foul-mouthed lesbian of Portuguese and Jewish heritage, Muriel Amelia Belcher, who was born at Edgbaston Friday the 26th of June 1908, the daughter of a moneylender she hated. On Wednesday the 15th of December 1948, at a time when pubs could not serve alcohol between 2:40 p.m. and 6:30 p.m., but private drinking clubs could. The Colony Room Club's most famous member was the artist Francis Bacon. Muriel called him daughter, and he called her mother. He was introduced by Brian Howard, on whom Anthony Blanche was based in Evelyn Waugh's May 1945 novel Brideshead Revisited, after Bacon's father had thrown him out for wearing his mother's underwear. She gave him free drinks and £10 each week to bring in his rich and famous friends. The drinks there were said to be the most expensive in London. The first-floor club was described as being like a small living room, with a bar at one end and just one lavatory. Westminster Council once wrote to the club saying that it was a health hazard because its carpet was the most disgusting their inspector had ever seen. The club invested in a new green carpet, but Francis Bacon immediately ordered 6 bottles of champagne and poured them over it before declaring himself satisfied. Mercurial Muriel Belcher would sit at the bar during opening hours, dispensing her wisdom and insults. "Shut up, cunty! Order some more champagne," was a favourite phrase. Other famous members included George Melly, who said of her, "Muriel was a benevolent witch who managed to draw in all London's talent up those filthy stairs. She was like a great cook, working with the ingredients of people and drink, and she loved money." Daniel Farzan, Tom Baker, Peter Blake, Geoffrey Bernard, Barry Humphries, Christine Keller, Molly Parkin, Colin MacInnes, who used to enjoy sitting in there on sunny days with the curtains closed, and Liverpool poet Brian Patten, who described the Colony Room Club as a small urinal full of fractious old geezers bitching about each other. Belcher died on Wednesday the 31st of October 1979, and the club was taken over by her faithful barman, Ian Ida Board, who was born at Exeter Monday the 16th of December 1929, who ran it until his own death from cirrhosis on Sunday the 26th of June 1994. Board's barman, Michael Voyas, born at London Thursday the 9th of August 1956 and died Sunday the 6th of June 2010 of cancer, succeeded him until 2008, when running the club had become financially unfeasible. When he auctioned some works of art and raised £40,000, some club members took him to court, saying he did not have the right to sell the art. An attempt to keep the club open failed, and it closed for good in 2008. The Colony Room Club was part of the Bermuda Triangle of Soho, along with the French House, 49 Dean Street, London, W1D, 5BG, and the Coach and Horses, 29 Greek Street, London, W1D, 5DH. The Colony Room Club premises were converted into a two-bedroom flat. John and Anne Darwin. 3 and 4 The Cliff, Seaton Carew, Hartlepool, Cleveland, TS25 7AB. In the history of scams and cons, that perpetrated by the Darwins must rank near the very top for audacity. This seemingly ordinary couple embarked on a new life in Panama after John Ronald Darwin, born in Hartlepool Monday the 14th of August 1950, a former teacher, bank worker and prison warder, faked his death on Thursday the 21st of March 2002 by vanishing off the coast near North Gare, Seaton Carew, in a canoeing accident. On Saturday the 22nd of December 1973, Darwin had married Anne Stevenson in Blackhall. In December 2000, John and his wife Anne bought numbers 3 and 4 The Cliff. Anne Carew made fraudulent insurance and pension claims. The plan was hatched when they faced losing their imposing seafront home. They had a property portfolio of 12 and were struggling to make mortgage payments. John paddled into the sea in his homemade canoe and then apparently vanished. Mrs. Carew, a doctor's receptionist, drove to a Durham police station to report her husband missing and then began the process of declaring him dead, conning insurers and pension funds out of £250,000. John was, in fact, living in Panama until a change in the law saw him return to England and fake amnesia in 2003. He lived in secret in a room in a bedsit the couple owned next door to the family home. In October 2007, Anne Darwin sold 3 The Cliff and moved to Panama permanently, while on Saturday the 1st of December, John surrendered at a central London police station, saying he could remember nothing after 2000. Mrs. Carew professed ignorance of his behaviour until a 2006 picture of the couple smiling in a Panama estate agent's appeared online and was published in the Daily Mirror on Wednesday the 5th of December. The couple went on trial at Teesside Crown Court. Found guilty in July 2008, John Carew was jailed for 6 years and 3 months, after admitting 7 charges of deception. He was released in January 2011. Anne was sentenced to 6.5 years in prison after a jury found her guilty of 6 counts of fraud and 9 of money laundering. She was released from Askham Grange Prison near York in March 2011. On St. Valentine's Day 2012, the Crown Prosecution Service said that £501,641.39 in life insurance and pension payouts given to Anne Darwin had been recovered. The Darwins are now divorced. A drama about the events, The Thief, His Wife, and the Canoe, was broadcast in April 2022, starring Eddie Marsan as John Darwin and Monica Dolan as his wife. Elephant Man. Liverpool Street Station, London, EC2M 7QH. On Thursday the 24th of June 1886, Joseph Carey Merrick, the so-called Elephant Man, because of the hideous disfiguring disease, neurofibromatosis, that caused fleshy growths to appear on his body, arrived at Liverpool Street suffering from a severe bronchial infection, having been robbed and abandoned by an Austrian showman while working in Belgium. Thanks to the Victorian doctor, Frederick Treves, Merrick moved to the Royal London Hospital, Whitechapel Road, London, E1-1FR, where he stayed for the rest of his life, in 2 rooms on Bedstead Square. Merrick died from asphyxiation there on Friday the 11th of April, 1890, aged 27. Merrick's large head meant that he was unable to sleep in a supine position. It seemed that on his last night, he tried to sleep lying down like normal people. His skeleton is on permanent private display at the Royal London Hospital. Dr. Wynne Edwin Baxter led the judicial inquiry into Merrick's death and had also overseen the inquiries into Polly Nichols, Annie Chapman, and Elizabeth Stride, the victims of Jack the Ripper. At the time of his death, at 170 Stoke Newington Church Street, London N16 0JL, on Friday the 1st of October 1920, Baxter had been coroner for London for 33 years and was known as the father of the London coroners, using the telegram address Inquest London. Ghost Village. Imber, Salisbury Plain, Wiltshire, SN10. 4 years into the Second World War, the residents of this remote Wiltshire village were given days to evacuate their homes so it could be used by American troops practicing for the D-Day invasion of Normandy in June 1944. In the late 19th century, the War Office began buying land on Salisbury Plain for military use, and by the outbreak of the Second World War, almost all of the land in and around Imber, with the exception of the church, St. Giles, dating from the 13th century, the vicarage, a Baptist chapel, the schoolroom, and the Bell Inn, belonged to the Ministry of War. On Monday the 1st of November 1943, the people of Imber were called to a meeting in the village schoolroom, and given just 47 days' notice to leave their homes. Compensation for the upheaval was limited, and the occupants of one farm had to be forcibly evicted by the army. Albert Nash, who had been the village's blacksmith for more than 40 years, was found sobbing over his anvil, and later became the first resident to die and be brought back to Imber for burial. The inhabitants were told that they could return after the war, but the promise was broken, and a rally attended by about 2,000 people on Sunday the 22nd of January 1961, demanding the village be returned to its rightful owners, achieved little. An agreement was reached that the village would be opened 3 days a year for people to visit their abandoned homes, and the church would be maintained and opened for worship on the Sunday closest to the Feast of St. Giles. The village is open to visitors on other occasions, certain bank holidays, and around Christmas. Habitat. 77 Fulham Road, Chelsea, London, SW3 6RE. Terence Conran, born at Kingston-upon-Thames Sunday the 4th of October 1931 and died at Kintbury, Berkshire, Saturday the 12th of September 2020, and his third wife, Caroline Herbert, opened the first Habitat store in rather dreary premises in Chelsea on Monday the 11th of May 1964. Its staff had uniforms by Mary Quant and hairstyles by Vidal Sassoon. Conran wanted to introduce a European way of shopping to London and put Habitat's success down to selling cheap pasta storage jars, just as London took dried pasta to its heart. The shop sold paper pendant lampshades and continental quilts, later to become known as duvets. In 1966, Habitat printed its first catalogue, with illustrations by Juliet Glynn Smith. That same year, the company began a mail-order business. In 1971, it began selling its first flat-pack furniture and was floated on the stock exchange in 1981. The following year, it merged with Mothercare to create Habitat Mothercare Group plc. Another merger in 1986 saw it become Storehouse plc, along with British Home Stores. Conran left the company in 1989. On Friday the 2nd of September 2016, Habitat was bought by the Sainsbury's Group for £1.4 billion. Harrods, 228 Borough High Street, Southwark, London, SE1 1JX. The Top People's Store began in very humble circumstances south of the river in Southwark. In 1824, Charles Henry Harrod, born at Lexton, Essex, Tuesday the 16th of April 1799, and died at 2 Oxford Terrace, Wellesley Road, Chiswick, Middlesex, Tuesday the 3rd of March 1885, opened a shop in Borough High Street that was at various times a draper, a mercer, and a haberdasher. In 1832, he was running Harrod and Wicking, linen drapers, retail, but the business lasted barely 12 months. That same year, he opened Harrod & Co. Grocers, 163 Upper Whitecross Street, Clerkenwell, London EC1. Harrod began supplying tea from premises at 4 Cable Street, Whitechapel, London, E1 8JG, and opened new wholesale premises at 38 Eastcheap, London, EC3M 1HD, in 1849. Harrod met and became friends with Philip Henry Burden, who ran a small grocer's at 8 Middle Queen's Buildings, Knightsbridge, London, SW3. Burden lacked business acumen, and Harrod took control of the shop in 1849. In 1853, Harrod moved his family above the shop, which was open from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. He announced his retirement in 1861, but rather than passing the shop on to his son, Charles Digby Harrod, born on Monday the 25th of January 1841 and died on Tuesday the 15th of August 1905, the old man sold it to him instead, the last payment being made in 1864. Charles Jr. worked hard, and by 1868 the business, now at 105 Brompton Road, Knightsbridge, London SW3 1ES, was taking £1,000 a week, or £120,490 at 2022 values. Harrods began to stock perfumes, stationery, and patent medicines on its way to creating the modern department store. In June 1870, the shop started offering a delivery service for local customers. It also only accepted cash. The invoices bore the legend, "Mr. Harrod begs to mention that he sells exclusively for cash. All country orders must be paid for previous to their being dispatched." He had 16 employees accounting for a £15 weekly wage bill, and 2 delivery boys, who were each paid 10 shillings. In 1874, the shop was enlarged, with the purchase of leases at 101 and 103 Brompton Road, and Harrods stores appeared on the window for the first time. Harrod was a tough but fair employer. By 1880, he had 100 staff who received overtime pay, unusual for the time, and a sovereign on their annual holiday. He would sack staff at a moment's notice and fine them a penny halfpenny for every 15 minutes they were late. Disaster struck on Thursday the 6th of December 1883 when the store burnt down. The next day, Harrod wrote to all his customers promising their Christmas orders would be fulfilled but will be delayed in the execution a day or two. With the help of businessman Edgar Cohen, born at Whitechapel, London 1853, and died at London Sunday the 29th of January 1933, whom he had met on a bus when he had forgotten the money to pay for his fare, he found new premises to carry on trading. A new Harrods opened on the site of the old one in September 1884, and was soon taking £2,000 a week, or £265,000 in 2022. Exhausted, Charles Digby Harrod retired in 1889, and the shop became a limited liability company known as Harrods Stores Limited. Sir Alfred Newton, who was born at Hull Friday the 19th of October 1849 and died Monday the 20th of June 1921, became chairman, and Harrod retired to Somerset and then Sussex. However, he returned when the new company struggled, even though he owned no shares in the business. In 1891, he appointed Sir Richard Burbage, born at Manor Farm, South Wraxall, Wiltshire, Tuesday the 2nd of March 1847, and died at 51 Hans Mansions, Knightsbridge, London SW1X, Thursday the 31st of May 1917, as general manager, becoming managing director 2 years later. It was Burbage who made Harrods the success story that it is today. He reduced the opening hours by 60 minutes, introduced subsidized meals for staff, and abolished the fines for tardiness. In 1894, work began on the frontage that is seen today. The work was completed in 1905. 9 years later, Harrods bought the department store Dickens and Jones. His son, Sir Richard Woodman Burbage, took over in 1917, and grandson Sir Richard Grant Woodman Burbage, born at 35 Upper George Street, Marylebone, London, W1, on Saturday the 7th of December 1872, and died at Siswood, Sandygate Lane, Lower Beeding, Horsham, RH13 6NF, on Sunday the 3rd of June 1945, took over in 1917, and his son, Sir Richard Grant Woodman Burbage, born at 53 Stanhope Gardens, Kensington, London, SW7 5RF, on Wednesday the 23rd of June 1897, and died at Walnut Tree Cottage, Ashampstead, Berkshire RG8 9RJ, on Wednesday the 2nd of February 1966, took the reins in 1935. In 1920, Harrods snapped up another department store, Swan and Edgar, and 8 years later bought D.H. Evans. In 1959, House of Fraser bought Harrods, before itself being sold to the Fayed brothers in 1985 for £615 million. Did you know? London's first escalator was unveiled at Harrods on Wednesday the 16th of November 1898, introduced by Richard Burbage, who believed customers would not want to climb so many steps. He also had a personal hatred of lifts. The first escalator rose 40 feet into the air, from the ground floor to the first, and was more like a conveyor belt with handrails. For customers who were discombobulated by their experience, an attendant offered free cognac or sal volatile, smelling salts, at the top. A lift replaced the escalator in 1909. Adolf Hitler. 102 Upper Stanhope Street, Toxteth, Liverpool, L8 1UN. This 8-room, 3-bedroom flat is supposedly where Adolf Hitler stayed when he arrived in 1912 to escape service in the Austrian army. It was the home of his half-brother Alois, who lived from 1882 to 1956, and his Irish wife, Bridget Elizabeth Dowling, born at Dublin Friday the 3rd of July 1891 and died at Long Island, New York, Tuesday the 18th of November 1969. They had married in London in June 1910, and their only child, William Patrick Hitler, was born here on Sunday the 12th of March 1911, dying in New York on Friday the 14th of July 1987. Adolf stayed in England until April 1913, when Alois bought him a ticket back to Germany. There are lots of stories, but no actual proof Hitler ever did visit England. Some claim he worked as a waiter at the Adelphi Hotel in Ranelagh Street, Liverpool, L3 5UL. This seems unlikely, since it did not open until Monday the 9th of March 1914. While one man claimed he stood next to him at Goodison Park to watch Everton. Scousers joke that Hitler was there to scope out where to drop bombs on the city in 30 years' time. In 1978, Beryl Bainbridge published a novel, Young Adolf, about the visit to Liverpool. The house no longer exists. Kentucky Fried Chicken, 92 Fishergate, Preston, Lancashire, PR1 2NJ. The first Kentucky Fried Chicken in Britain appeared here in May 1965, with a cardboard cutout of Colonel Sanders welcoming customers. The shop was set up by Bristolian Harry Latham, who died Thursday the 23rd of May 2019, and his partner Raymond Allen. Working with the Colonel, they soon expanded the franchise nationwide, with the first Kentucky Fried Chicken in London opening in North Finchley in November 1968. In 1991, the company changed its name to KFC. Lavatory, Fleet Street, London, EC4. The Society of Arts opened the first public flushing lavatory on Monday the 2nd of February 1852 in Fleet Street, opposite the Royal Courts of Justice, in a bid to stop disease spreading through public fouling. It was for gentlemen only, and the ladies had to wait 9 more days for relief. That one opened in Bedford Street in London. The facilities were called public waiting rooms, and a staff of 3 ensured all was as it should be. The Society of Arts placed advertisements in The Times announcing the new public conveniences, and 50,000 leaflets were distributed. The first loos were not a success. By the end of the first month, just 58 men and 24 women had used them. The cause of the failure may have been financial. The society charged 2p for spending a penny. When the idea finally took off, Victorian loos were often ornate affairs, tiled underground chambers encircled by iron fences and crowned with arches or pergolas. Sadly, many are now closed due to vandalism, lack of local council investment, or because they were used for other matters. Lyons Corner House, 7 to 14 Coventry Street, London, W1. In 1887, the first J. Lyons and Company was founded by the professional artist Sir Joseph Lyons, born at Lant Street, Southwark, London, SE1 1RB, Wednesday the 29th of December 1847, and died at Hyde Park Hotel, 66 Knightsbridge, London, SW1X 7LA, Friday the 22nd of June 1917. Tobacconist Barnet Salmon, born Sunday the 24th of May 1829 and died Thursday the 11th of February 1897, and his brothers-in-law Isidore, born Wednesday the 13th of August 1851, died Friday the 10th of December 1920, and Montague Gluckstein, born Tuesday the 18th of July, 1854, died Saturday the 7th of October, 1922, at 34 Whitechapel Road, London, E1 1DQ. It received its first catering contract at the Newcastle Jubilee exhibition that year. On Saturday the 16th of March, 1889, a second firm was registered, J. Lyons and Company Limited, which took over the contracts of J. Lyons and Company. The third iteration of J. Lyons and Company Limited was registered on Tuesday the 10th of April, 1894, and Joseph Lyons was appointed the managing director. On Thursday the 20th of September that year, it opened its first tea shop at 213 Piccadilly, London, W1J 9HF. This was to be the beginning of a chain. The firm believed that the public wanted good quality fare, served in attractive surroundings by polite staff, and no alcohol. In other cafes of the time, tea was brewed in the morning and kept hot in large urns. At Lyons, it was brewed for each individual customer, who ate from dainty china on marble tables and sat on red plush chairs. It was a roaring success, and queues formed outside, sitting on benches thoughtfully provided by the management as they waited for a vacant table. All the food and drink was prepared by Lyons' own cooks at Cadby Hall, 62 Hammersmith Road, Hammersmith, London W14 0QH. There were 66 items on the menu, including mutton pie for 7p, iced bovril and soda, egg rissoles and truffled foie gras sausage for 3p. The 26 waitresses wore numbered brooches, and customers were told to write to the head office with any complaints. Postage will be refunded. 2 more tea shops were opened later that year, and a dozen more appeared in 1895. By the end of their first year in business, the company announced a profit of £11,404, 6 shillings and 4p. By 1900, there were 37 Lyons tea shops in London and branches in Bradford, Leeds, Liverpool, Manchester and Sheffield. J. Lyons also invested in classy restaurants and hotels, but it was the corner houses that captured the public imagination in the 20th century. The first Lyons Corner House opened on Coventry Street on Monday the 4th of January 1909 and closed on Saturday the 13th of June 1970, initially seating 2,000 people until 1922, when it was enlarged to hold 4,500. Thanks to further expansion, it had an all-night cafe in July 1923, a brasserie in the basement in September 1936, Old Vienna Cafe in February 1940, Sandwich Meal Counter, September 1942, Vitasun Cafe, October 1942, another brasserie called the Salad Bowl in April 1943, and a Wimpy Grill in May 1955. The corner house served 25,000 meals in 24 hours. Unlike the tea shops, every meal was cooked on site. Most of the Lyons houses were over 4 or 5 stories and employed around 400 staff. Each floor had its own restaurant style, and all had orchestras playing to the diners almost continuously throughout the day and evening. At one time, they were open 24 hours a day. A large food hall usually took up the ground floor and sold normal as well as specialty foodstuffs. Lyons corner houses and Maison Lyons contained hairdressing salons, telephone booths, theatre booking agencies, and a food delivery service to any address in London twice a day. They were also pioneers of self-service dining. The Strand Lyons Corner House offered a fixed-price meal, with the attraction of being able to fit as much as you could on your tray. There were 3 official corner houses and 4 Maison Lyon in London, which were almost identical to the corner houses but came under a separate management structure. The corner houses were located at Coventry Street, Strand, and Tottenham Court Road. The Maisons Lions were at Oxford Street, opened on Thursday the 21st of November 1912, closed Sunday the 17th of September 1916, Shaftesbury Avenue, a second Oxford Street, which opened Monday the 18th of September 1916 and closed Sunday the 22nd of October 1933, and Marble Arch. The waitresses, in their black uniforms with white hats and pinnies, were called nippies because of their ability to move speedily around the diners' tables. The first nippies started work on Thursday the 1st of January 1925. It was reported by Picture Post that every year 800 to 900 nippies got married to customers they met on duty, and the publication reported that being a nippy was good training for becoming a housewife. As tastes changed, the corner houses and Maisons Lions lost custom. The Strand Corner House, on the junction of Strand and Craven Street, opened on Thursday the 8th of April 1915 and closed on Monday the 28th of February 1977. The Oxford Corner House, on the junction of Tottenham Court Road and Hanway Street, with entrances in Tottenham Court Road and 14 to 16 Oxford Street, London W1, was opened on Thursday the 3rd of May 1928 by their Royal Highnesses the Duke and Duchess of York, serving 21,947 meals on its first day. It closed in May 1967 and never made a profit in its 39-year history. The Maison Lions Marble Arch, at the junction of Oxford Street and Great Cumberland Place, opened on Monday the 23rd of October 1933 and closed on Thursday the 27th of January 1977. The Maison Lions Shaftesbury Avenue, once a recruiting centre for nippies, at the north side of Shaftesbury Avenue, opposite the Trocadero restaurant, opened on Monday the 16th of August 1915 and closed on Thursday the 14th of November 1940. On Monday the 22nd of June 1981, thanks to the work of company chairman Neil Salmon, who was born on Thursday the 17th of February 1921 and died Tuesday the 8th of August in 1989, the Strand Lions Corner House reopened. However, by that time, Allied Breweries Limited had acquired Lions. In 1994, Allied Lions decided to dispose of its food manufacturing operation and to change its name to Allied Domecq. It closed on Tuesday the 14th of June 1988 after initial enthusiasm waned. The individual companies were sold off, and Lions' head office was closed the following year. Did you know? In May 1944, the Salad Bowl Brasserie opened in the Oxford Corner House. A little under a year later, it was the scene of a double homicide. Around 4 p.m. on Friday the 20th of April 1945, 58-year-old Jean-Baptiste Tratsart, his daughter Claire, 29, and son Hugh, 17, boarded the number 49 bus from Streatham to Trinity Road Underground Station and then from there went to Tottenham Court Road. The family made their way to the Oxford Corner House, where they met the other son, Jacques Adrien, and two more family members, sister Anne, 13, and an aunt, also called Claire. Jacques was an insomniac and a manic depressive. He had sought medical help, but believed the psychiatrists were not helping him, so stopped seeing them. Sister Claire was an epileptic, and Hugh had cerebral palsy and was wheelchair-bound, so Jacques decided that they would be better off dead. At 5 p.m., they sat down to dinner. Some time after, Jacques pulled a Browning automatic revolver, aimed at his sister and pulled the trigger, but nothing happened. Only Hugh saw what had happened, and he sat in his wheelchair grinning at his brother, who put the gun under the tablecloth. 10 minutes later, he pulled the gun out again and fired, but again nothing happened. This time, Aunt Claire asked him what he was doing, and he said it was a water pistol. Under cover of the linen, he fiddled with the gun and heard a click as the safety mechanism was released. For a third time, He pulled the gun out and this time shot Claire. The other diners fled in the melee, and Tratzart shot his father twice before turning the gun on Hugh. He was also shot twice, and then placed the weapon against his temple and pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. Furious, he threw the gun into the air and it landed in one of the upturned light bulbs. Indeed, it was only when the lights were turned on later that day that an eagle-eyed policeman spotted the gun's outline. Jean-Baptiste was admitted to Middlesex Hospital but died 5 minutes after arrival. Claire died at the scene, as a priest performed the last rites. Hugh survived the assault and died aged 61 in July 1988. On Monday the 28th of May 1945, Jacques appeared at the Old Bailey charged with 2 counts of murder, 1 count of attempted murder, and 1 count of attempted suicide. He pleaded not guilty, but he was found guilty by reason of insanity and detained at Broadmoor Psychiatric Hospital, Crowthorne, Berkshire, RG45 7EG. He died there, having slit a vein, on Friday the 30th of May, 1947. Marks and Spencer. Kirkgate Market, Leeds, West Yorkshire, LS2 7HY. In 1884, Jewish émigré Michael Marks, born at Slonim, Russia, June 1859, and died at Knoll House, 396 Bury New Road, Higher Broughton, Salford, M73NG on Tuesday the 31st of December 1907, aged 48, met Isaac Dewhurst while on the hunt for work. Dewhurst loaned Marks £5 to buy stock for a stall at Kirkgate Market in Leeds. Dewhurst's bookkeeper was Thomas Spencer, who was born at Skipton, Yorkshire, Friday the 7th of November 1851, and died at Whittington, Staffordshire, Tuesday the 25th of July 1905, aged 53, and they formed a partnership on Friday the 28th of September 1894, with each partner making share contributions of £300, or £41,500 at 2022 values. In 1901, Marks and Spencer moved to the Birkenhead Open Market, where in 1905 they opened the Penny Bazaar at stall numbers 11 and 12 in the centre aisle. Marks remained in charge of all buying operations and retail, while Spencer focused on wholesale and the distribution of goods from their warehouse. It was at this time that Marks moved to Hume, Manchester, living above the shop, and also leasing a warehouse in the city that was to become the new focus of operations. By 1900, Marks and Spencer had expanded to include 36 penny bazaars, as they called their shops. Don't ask the price, it's a penny, and a dozen high street stores. The following year, Marks and Spencer built a warehouse at Derby Street, Manchester, which became the company's first registered address and headquarters. The official first Marks and Spencer's store opened in 1904 at Cross Arcade, Boar Lane in Leeds. In June 1926, the company went public, and on Monday the 5th of November 1928, the St. Michael trademark was registered by Simon Marks, 1st Baron Marks of Broughton, born at Trafalgar Street, Leylands in Leeds, Monday the 9th of July 1888, and died at 47 Baker Street, London, W1U 8AA, on Tuesday the 8th of December 1964, in honour of his father. Initially, the name was only used on textile goods. In 1940, margarine became the first food product to use the trademark. The company stopped using St. Michael in 2000. Frozen food was sold for the first time in 1972, and the following year, the company became the first to use sell-by dates on their foodstuffs. The flagship store was opened at 458 Oxford Street, London W1C 1AP, on Wednesday the 5th of November 1930. Work will begin on developing the site in 2023, with a new Marks & Spencer Marble Arch due to open in 2027. McDonald's. 56 to 60 Powis Street, Woolwich, London, SE186LQ. Telephone 020 8317 0102. The first McDonald's hamburger emporium in Britain, the 3000th worldwide, was opened here on Wednesday the 13th of November 1974 by disc jockey Ed Stewart and Mayor of Woolwich Len Squirrel. On its 30th anniversary, the restaurant celebrated by selling its fare at 1974 prices. You could buy a hamburger for 17p. The first manager, Ohio-born Paul S. Preston, 36, later became the president and chief executive officer of the UK division of the corporation, retiring in 2001. In 1986, the first franchise-operated restaurant opened in Hayes, Middlesex. On Saturday the 12th of October 1991, the 400th UK restaurant and the first in Northern Ireland opened in Belfast. National Health Service. Park Hospital, Davyhulme, Manchester, M41 5SL. Telephone 0161 748 4022. On Monday the 5th of July 1948, Aneurin Bevan, the Secretary of State for Health, opened the first National Health Service hospital, stating, "We now have the moral leadership of the world." It is now Trafford General Hospital. Bevan's NHS had a three-prong plan. It met everyone's needs, it was free at the point of delivery, and it was based on need, not ability to pay. Prior to the NHS, people usually had to pay for their own health treatment. The night before, Bevan blotted his copybook in a speech at a Labour rally in Bellevue, Manchester, calling the Conservatives lower than vermin. The speech earned him a reprimand from Prime Minister Clement Attlee and the lasting enmity of the Tories. The NHS story began when Bevan was 12 and still at school. London School of Economics co-founder Beatrice Webb, who lived from 1858 to 1943, suggested the idea in the Poor Law Royal Commission in 1909. At the 1934 Labour Party conference in Southport, Dr. Somerville Hastings, the president of the Socialist Medical Association, passed a motion that Labour should introduce a national health service. The Beveridge Report was published on Tuesday the 24th of November, 1942, recommending a comprehensive health and rehabilitation service for the prevention and cure of disease. Following Clement Attlee's landslide win in the general election of 1945, wheels were set in motion. The Conservatives voted against the idea that the NHS would own all the hospitals, but the Labour majority saw it through. Many doctors were opposed to the idea of a national health service, and in May 1948, the British Medical Association voted not to participate. Bevan persuaded the doctors to join, not least with financial incentives. "Ultimately, I had to stuff their mouths with gold," he said. In June 1948, the Central Office of Information for the Ministry of Health issued a leaflet explaining the new service. "It will provide you with all medical, dental, and nursing care. Everyone, rich or poor, man, woman, or child, can use it, or any part of it. There are no charges, except for a few special items. There are no insurance qualifications. But it is not a charity. You are all paying for it, mainly as taxpayers, and it will relieve your money worries in times of illness." In 1951, Bevan resigned in protest when the Labour government introduced charges for dentists, false teeth, and spectacles, along with an up-and-coming MP called Harold Wilson. In 1952, the Conservatives, under Winston Churchill, brought in a fee of 1 shilling, that's £8 in 2022, for prescription forms. In December 1956, the cost was increased to 1 shilling per item. In 1965, they were abolished by Prime Minister Harold Wilson, but later reintroduced. The NHS currently employs more than 1.5 million people. Non-existent houses. 23 to 24 Leinster Gardens, London, W2. To the casual passer-by, Leinster Gardens seems a perfectly ordinary street in Bayswater. However, closer inspection reveals that numbers 23 and 24 are merely a 5 feet thick facade containing 18 blackened windows. When the Metropolitan Railway extension, now the Circle Line, was built in 1868, it used locomotives that puffed out smoke. To prevent the tunnels becoming clogged, short sections were exposed to the elements to allow the trains to vent off. One such area was created at Leinster Gardens by demolishing 2 houses and creating the facade. Oxfam. 17 Broad Street, Oxford, OX1 3AS. Oxfam opened Britain's first permanent charity shop here in February 1948. The organisation had been founded 6 years earlier as the Oxford Committee for Famine Relief by Canon Theodore Richard Milford, who lived 1896 to 1987, and the Oxford Meeting of the Quakers. Their original mission was to send food through the Allied blockade to the people of German-occupied Greece. In 1943, the Oxford Committee for Famine Relief was registered as a charity. Its first appeal, Greek Week, raised £12,700 for the Greek Red Cross. The first paid employee, Joe Mitty, who lived from 1919 to 2007, began working at the Broad Street shop on Monday the 9th of November 1949. The committee gradually became known by its abbreviated telegraph address, Oxfam, and that name was formally adopted in 1965. Pizza Express. 29 Wardour Street, London, W1D 6PS. The first Pizza Express was opened here on Saturday the 27th of March 1965 by Peter Boiseau, who was born at Peterborough Saturday the 16th of November 1929, who, having returned from Italy, he wanted somewhere to buy a proper Italian pizza and decided to create such a place. He ordered a large pizza oven, but when it arrived, it would not fit through the door, so Boiseau and his staff had to make a hole in the front wall. The first day of business was not successful. Only £3, or £62 in 2022 values, went into the till. Slices of pizza cost 2 shillings and were served on greaseproof paper with plastic cutlery and coffee in paper cups. The plastic cutlery was soon replaced by stainless steel because the heat of the cheese melted the plastic. The original pizza was square, as were the slices. Boiseau found mozzarella from the only producer in London and was the first man to import Peroni to the UK. The second Pizza Express opened on Coptic Street, next to the British Museum, in 1967. Peter Boiseau died aged 89 on Wednesday the 5th of December 2018. Pontins Holiday Park. Breen Sands, Burnham-on-Sea, Somerset, TA8, 2RJ. Fred Pontin, who was born at 127 Edward Road, Walthamstow, Essex, E176PA, on Wednesday the 24th of October 1906, and died at Blackpool on Saturday the 30th of September 2000, opened his first holiday park on an 8-acre site in Breen Sands, an abandoned D-Day training camp. He borrowed £25,000, half from city investors and half from Barclays Bank, and bought Ministry of Supply surplus stock to furnish the camp. By the end of the following year, he had 6 resorts, with the capacity for 1,300 holidaymakers. Unlike his rival, Billy Butlin, Pontin offered self-catering holidays. By 1963, he had 22 camps, and also offered self-catering Mediterranean holidays. Holidaymakers could go pontinental at 10 camps including Mallorca, Tenerife, and the Costa Brava. By 1975, he was making an annual profit of £3.6 million, or £32 million at 2022 values. Pontin kept racehorses and gained publicity for his business with names like Go Pontin, Go Continental, and Pontingo. On Saturday the 3rd of April 1971, his horse, Specify, ridden by John Cook and trained by John Sutcliffe, won the Grand National. Pontin was knighted in 1976 for services to charity. Aged 73, he sold his company to Coral Leisure for £56 million, or £302 million in 2022, but was thrown off the board in 1981. There were 30 resorts in the portfolio at one point, but by the time the company went into administration on Friday the 12th of November 2010, there were just 5 left. Breen Sands in Somerset, Camber Sands in East Sussex, Pakefield, Lowestoft in Suffolk, Prestatyn Sands, Denbighshire, and Southport on Merseyside. Unlike Butlins with its red coats, camp entertainers at Pontin's sported blue coats. Former blue coats include Shane Ritchie, Lisa Scott Lee, Helen Chamberlain, Lee Mack, and Bobby Davro. The 1973 film Holiday on the Buses was filmed at and set in the Pontin's Prestatyn Resort. Port Sunlight, Wirral, Merseyside, CH62. This village was built by an employer for his staff. William Hesketh Lever was born at 16 Wood Street, Bolton, Lancashire, BL1 1DY, on Friday the 19th of September 1851. One of the 10 children of grocer James Lever, born at Bolton Friday the 25th of August 1809 and died at Cheshire Wednesday the 26th of May 1897. Lever saw a world outside vegetables, and he launched Lever's Pure Honey Soap tablets in 1874. He launched Lever Brothers 10 years later, selling soap made mainly from vegetable oils, rather than the usual tallow. The company registered the name Sunlight. Their products stood out by being wrapped in paper. Lux soap powder and Vim household cleaner were also launched. Lever Brothers initially paid other companies to make Sunlight soap, but the firm bought a soap works at Warrington in 1885 and began to make their own. In 1887, the company bought 52 acres of land, later extended to 500 acres, on the Mersey near Bebington in Cheshire, for the purposes of building a factory. Lever conceived the idea of a working village, in which workers would be provided with a home near their place of work, which would engender loyalty both ways. It was called Port Sunlight, and 900 houses were eventually built there. Rents were taken straight from the pay packet. The kitchen houses cost 5 or 6 shillings weekly, while the parlour houses went from between 7 and 10 shillings. Male employees were paid between 20 and 25 shillings a week, so the fees were eminently affordable. The staff ate in vast dining halls, charged at threepence a meal. Taking maintenance and rates into account, Lever Brothers ran Port Sunlight at a loss. A primary school was built, along with shops and a post office, and residents could avail themselves of tennis courts, a football and cricket pitch, bowling greens, table tennis, and an open-air swimming pool. Unmarried women were provided with classes in cookery, needlework, and housewifery to prepare them for looking after their husbands. A pub, the Bridge Inn, opened in October 1900, although it was dry until 1903, and remained dry on a Sunday until 1973. Lever believed in the benefits of sleeping outdoors, whatever the weather, and indeed the death rate in Port Sunlight's Cottage Hospital, opened in 1907, where 2 wards were open to the elements, was about 50% lower than Liverpool. He lived in a magnificent house, Thornton Manor, but the bedroom he shared with his wife was open to the elements all year round. Lever had a sort of profit-sharing scheme. Of an annual bonus, he said, "It would not do you much good if you send it down your throats in the form of bottles of whiskey, bags of sweets, or fat geese at Christmas. On the other hand, if you leave the money with me, I shall use it to provide for you everything that makes life pleasant. Nice houses, comfortable homes, and healthy recreation." People tended to stay at Port Sunlight, because if they left the company, they also had to leave their homes. A weekly dance was organised, which Lever attended. He often asked plain girls who had been overlooked to join him on the dance floor. He always danced with Ethel Williams, the hunchback, recalled one worker. In 1890, Lever Brothers became a limited company and was floated on the market in 1894 with a capital of £1.5 million, or £207,735,000 at 2022 values. Lever eventually owned all the ordinary shares which had not been offered to the public. He began to buy up other soap brands, and in 1906 proposed more soap mergers. A dozen companies began to amalgamate, a move condemned by the Daily Mail, which saw its advertising income decrease. Such was the power and ferocity of the Mail attack that the Sunlight brand was harmed, and some of the other soap manufacturers pulled out of the amalgamation idea. The Mail did not give up its campaign, and on Tuesday the 4th of December 1906, Lever sued for libel. The case was heard at Liverpool Assizes from Monday the 15th of July 1907. Lever was represented by Sir Edward Carson, while the Mail hired Rufus Isaacs. Lever's performance in the witness box was so assured, the Mail gave up on the second day and offered a settlement. Lever Brothers received £141,000, or £18 million in 2022, from Lord Northcliffe's newspapers, the largest libel payment ever made at that time, which he gave to Liverpool University to establish schools of tropical medicine, town planning, and civic design. In 1911, to ensure he had a regular supply of raw materials for his goods, he bought land in the Congo and built a town called Leverville, where he opened Lever hospitals. But he overreached himself in 1920 and almost wrecked his own legacy. In December 1911, Lever was made a baronet and was raised to the peerage on Thursday the 21st of June 1917 as Baron Leverhulme, becoming Viscount Leverhulme in 1922. King George V visited Port Sunlight in 1914. In August that year, 700 men signed up to fight for king and country. 481, the Port Sunlight Pals, were killed on the Somme in 1916. Lever died from pneumonia at The Hill, Hampstead, London, NW117EX, at 4:30 a.m. on Thursday the 7th of May 1925, leaving £1,625,409, 2 shillings and 4 pence. That's £101,097,635 in 2022. He was buried on Monday the 11th of May 1925 at Port Sunlight. In the 1980s, the first houses in Port Sunlight